Hello, everyone, and welcome. Glad you're with us today. I am Vanessa Lowe, your host, and I am the producer of Vanessa's Money Hour on G-Town Radio. And I also do this once a month with the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. So we've been doing this for quite a while now. We are financing Philadelphia's future. So set your screen to speaker view. That's the best way to participate. You can use that icon usually at the top right of your screen. Enter your questions in the chat. We want your questions. And let us know which section of the city you're from. Is it Mount Airy? Is it Center City? Is it North Philly? And if you'd like to join the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition mailing list, enter your email and your name in the chat. All right. This is a very quick half hour that we go through, so we're going to jump right in. Today's guest is kind of a regular. We love when Walt joins us. This is a conversation with Walt McRee. Welcome, Walt. Let me do a little bit of a introduction to Walt McRee. Walt is currently serving as the president and chair of the Public Banking Institute. He's been a leader of the modern public banking movement in the United States since its inception following the financial crisis of 2008. Remember that? During this time, Walt has been engaged in public banking initiatives across the country, such as the Pennsylvania Project and Banking on New Jersey. And also following an extensive national media career, Walt created, produced, and co-hosted radio and TV programs for public banking, including It's Our Money with Ellen Brown, that's often played on G-Town Radio, on the Progressive Radio Network, as well as Public Bank Solution TV series. He holds a BA in philosophy and geography from Valparaiso University. Welcome, Walt. And I just want to sort of, it's a provocative little note that we included here in the press advisory. It says that we're going to discuss the challenges and opportunities anticipated for the public banking movement following the election of Donald Trump. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am still, I'm just going to say out loud, deep mourning and sadness around that. So thank you for joining us, Walt.
Well, thank you, Vanessa, and hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and this opportunity to just do a bit of a review and kind of a taking stock of where we are at this point following the election of a couple of weeks ago. Vanessa talking about feeling mourning and so forth. Actually, I know some people who are doing a little group therapy around this. It's not funny, I suppose, but it is our reality. And I think that what we need to do is this reality is going to take us to the next stage of our power and our organization as citizens who are committed to economic justice and fairness and our democratic way. With regard to the outcome of the election, Gerard Miller, who is an financial editor for Governing Magazine, made a couple of observations, some of which I'm sure you've already assumed. But if there's a single theme that state and local policymakers should be internalizing right now, it's the importance of fiscal self-reliance. The habitual lobbying in Congress for ever-growing federal dollars is likely to face a lot of pushback in the coming regime. So a logical corollary of that is that the importance of properly funding state and local rainy day budget stabilization funds and other fiscal organizational, institutional assets that we have in the municipal and state level. The advice, I suppose, generally speaking, would be you're on your own now, kids. The kind of paternal thing is, hey, you've been riding this long enough. You've got to look at your life in a new way. Well, the hopes and the thoughts that we might have had under a different administration were not so carefully crafted, but there was a lot of wind at our backs about the idea and the support for public banking, but also for the idea that the government has an active role to play in anticipating or in helping the citizens of this country make a fair and decent living. After all, we are the world's most rich country, the richest world in history. And so for the people to live as we do, as many of us do, is a shame, it's a shock, and it's unacceptable. In the Census Bureau's 2024 report, poverty in the United States, actually in 2023, 41%, that's 4 out of 10 of this country's population, has a household income either under the poverty threshold or just above it, which means that their people are precariously living one emergency away from financial ruin, which translates into approximately 137 million people who are struggling every day to make it through without falling further behind. So 3 in 5 living paycheck to paycheck. These political wins and their outcomes have swept America. It's interesting to, it's hard, I suppose, to just generalize, but everybody's situation is different, but we're seeing this growing separation between the haves and the have-nots. We're not on the right track in that regard. And then, of course, we have in addition to the wages that aren't keeping pace with the cost of living, we're faced with new kinds of breakdowns and realities, such as the climate crisis. I just got back from North Carolina, where Hurricane Helene just devastated the area, where people are still not found, where creeks rose 25 to 30 feet, houses rolled away, and these people are lost everything. 85, 90% of the losses, of which I think were estimated at about $200 billion, are not insurance covered. So people who lost their homes literally lost everything and have nothing. What I saw was lines of cars along the road, people looking for food, water, clothing, anything that could be brought along the way. So, and then, of course, this is only going to get worse. Now, how this administration is going to respond to that, we don't know. We don't know what their focus will be, but I think some of us suspect that it'll be more on how to profit, how to make the financial markets more profitable. There's a disregard for egalitarian policy that actually could otherwise lift all boats, but that's going to give way to this profit maximization and further squeezing us as citizens into new situations where we're going to be looking for power centers. So what does that do with public banking? What does that have to do with the prospect of us reclaiming control and getting our hands on our money? As you perhaps know, the Public Banking Institute has been supporting initiatives for the last dozen years in about 50 locales around the country, at the state, city, and municipal level, and state, municipal, regional levels. We've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, but so far haven't scored any complete bank creations. We think we're getting close in some places, but there's more work to do. This might be being forced to look to ourselves for problem solving and in anticipation of the issues that are coming our way, I think is probably what we need. Because that is to say, we have got to devise a new way of organizing and controlling and getting access to public dollars. The issue isn't just about having public banks. It's about what's happening with public money. Where is it stashed? Who has the control of it? Well, when you look at pension funds, incremental funds, a variety of other agency funds, it's stashed in all kinds of places. But the people often don't have enough input on how it could be invested. And I think that's one of the focuses that we need to be looking at next is how do we evaluate, discover where our money is and how to get our hands on it in a way that the public has some control and some guidance, some oversight in a new way. Now, a public bank is the unique entity, the unique institutional entity that provides the infrastructural ability to manage these funds and to also to take them under their wing instead of leaving them in Wall Street based outposts like the hedge funds and the private equity funds and the big banks that are managing these pension dollars and so much more. So we need to create new alliances at the local level. Again, it's the local level where the action is, uh, in order for us to be able to bring new solutions, new ideas into public reality. In Philadelphia, your public banking group has done a really excellent job in starting to articulate some creative approaches. And I think that we should be encouraged in the face of the challenging investment demands that are on the doorstep that I'm hoping that the city administration will be more receptive to the ideas that the public banking initiative can bring to the table. These vast sums that are sitting around that are currently invested in privately managed funds are one of the targets that we want to bring into our view for creating some new policy and administrative activity. So, the real power of the people needs to be aggregated through some strategic analyses, but also some strategic formulations of how we're going to be making this happen. The city administration in Philadelphia hasn't taken the bait just yet, or hasn't hasn't signed the ordinance. Yeah, we'll do this. I think we need to have them do that. And why? Because there's not going to be any help coming from Washington. The crises are emerging. We have people who are living in communities that desperately need investment. And this is a demand that's legitimate because it is our money. I think that now is the time. The crises are strong enough. The impending problems are great enough to demand that we start to look at new avenues for how we can make things move forward. So it's our money. This is our time. Let's get on with it. And I'll turn it back over to you, and we can discuss some of these things.
I like that. It's our money. This is our time. Let's get on with it. Pretty compelling. All right. It's interesting that you started with talking about the economy. So I have sort of been in a news blackout for a couple of weeks, but yesterday I came across something that I'm going to put in the chat, or I think I did put in the chat. I just need to click return on it. It is a post-election love letter to my beloved impact investing community from Addisina Social Capital, which is Rachel Robichodi, founder. She grew up poor, Black woman in California, I believe. And so her letter, the summary of it, it had a lot of things, and it had a lot of grace. And she talked about the power of poverty and the role that played, she believes, in the election. And so there's a line about, let's be careful, essentially, about how we talk about or think about people who live in poverty, which is a lot of people, as you talked about, and being angry at them because maybe they voted a different way that we did. And what she said is, right now we're in the destruction phase, but at some point we're going to be in the rebuild phase, and we're going to need them, and we're going to need them on our side. So anyway, I thought that letter was really great, and I wouldn't have been able to take it in, I think, week one, but I'm a little away from it now, and I think she makes some very good points, particularly because she starts with talking so much about what her own experience of living in poverty was. All right, I'm going to turn it over, and let's see if we have any questions. Peter, if you want to start with something.
Thanks, Vanessa. I don't see anything in the chat other than a comment from Scott, which we can get to in a bit. But And also from Deb. Actually, maybe I'll just go to those questions. Deb asked, in a municipality, what would you suggest doing first? If successful, what would you do second, which would help the first? I guess that's feeding off of the idea that, hey, cities and states, you're on your own, and you know, suck it
Yeah.
up in a new political environment.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is in really a very good position to pull this forward. And I would just say too that one of the things we don't want to leave out is that the power of the people exists at all levels, whether you have money or not, and that lifting the economy needs to be. We need to look at it, lifting it from the bottom. Martin Luther King talked about lifting all boats by lifting the economy from the bottom, not top down, but really from the people. So we don't want to forget that even people without money have power, and the opportunity is to align together around some common threads of potency and of strategic action. Now, you guys do that, I think, very well at Neighborhood Networks. That you are networked in that way. Um, but I think that's really good. The Philadelphia matter. We're looking at using minority depositories as one way forward into creating an amalgam between city administration and community banks, credit unions, our local lenders. One of the things the public banking movement has done in the last dozen years is only talk about creating a brand new depository bank, which has been too much of a feast for legislators and others to swallow. They just haven't afraid of it. But what we've overlooked is the power of the public bank in North Dakota that works with the community banks and the credit unions and the other lenders and empowers them. Well, I think that marriage is the push me, pull you, push and pull dynamic that we can create. We want to empower our local lenders to do more, move more money and credit into these neighborhoods. And the logic is that by giving them more capital assets and more depository or underwriting strength and confidence, that cities will see that they have maybe a new infrastructural channel for helping to create new investment and redeploying some of the money that the city stashes in places like pension funds and other places that could be redirected for purpose.
So,
So, go ahead.
so Walt, if we have a new political environment, how there were opportunities that existed prior to the election. How have those opportunities changed or been either enhanced or impinged by the anticipated changes that are going to come about with a new Trump administration?
Well, I think that the money that may have been anticipated by states and city governments to come from DC may well not be on its way. So that the financial challenges that the municipalities and states are facing is probably is different. It's hard to, perhaps at this stage, to assess what kind of specific impact that would have on lending or on sources of funding. But with Washington sort of out of the picture as a financial partner, then the cities and states are going to have to rely on themselves. But look, we should do that anyway. We really need to have our own financial infrastructure that is self-sustaining, built on our assets, resources, and talents, et cetera, and connections. So I would think that a messaging and a line of strategic thought is that we look to ourselves to build this community to stand on its own, independent of Wall Street and independent of Washington. Now, I realize that Wall Street's got its hands in everything, but there's a lot that we can do that we're not doing.
Well, in the new political environment, do you think it's necessary for the public banking movement to become more politically aggressive? For example, PBI has been thinking about establishing a 501c4 to do more endorsements of candidates, as is one of the questions that's been asked, or to push more aggressively against our political leaders?
Well, the 501c4, this idea is important. I think we're at this point we're not just exactly there, but PBI does have an agenda to partner with creating strategic alliances with groups that are harmonious to public banking, that are already in the lending space or in the economic justice and policy and fairness space, for us to conjoin with them to create a new unified public banking movement. It's PBI, but it's also PBI and in the public interest, local self-reliance, working families, and unions and so forth, all of whom are people in the same economic framing as we are, who can bring our common strength together. So I think that the future should see public banking as a general category of unified synergy among these broadly diverse groups that share the common purpose. I think that's an unrealized goal that I know that I want to see PBI driving and catalyzing in coming years.
So you see new opportunities to insert the public banking into the other aspects of the progressive agenda.
Yes, and I'll say it another way. What we're talking about is creating a new American financial institution. I mean, public banks exist in North Dakota, right? And all over the world, but only North Dakota. So it's not a household word. It is not a unified thought. And one of the things we have to do is move public banking into the common understanding, but also then find ways for us to be working locally and nationally on moving these entities forwards. I think when we create partnerships with community banks and credit unions and the other community lenders, we're going to be a whole lot stronger, because that huge opposition will be mitigated, at least, or ameliorated on some terms. So we have that kind of evolutionary step to take, I think, with the public banking movement at this point. I'll say it another way, yet another way, and that is we're talking about public money. Public money is the heart of the topic. Public banks are the vehicle through which the people reclaim control and access to it.
And the purpose for them would be for local economically targeted investments.
For all the things that is missing. You know, I mean, we have people who we have co-ops that need money, small business lenders, affordable housing, the need to be able to respond to crises like the one I mentioned in the climate crises. Hey, are we going to look to FEMA to solve problems like this all the time? Well, we'll hope that it's still there, but there's going to have to be a lot of local infrastructural, fiscal strength to be able to respond that we have yet to develop in many cases.
Do you think going forward there's going to be a change in the regulatory environment and the attitude if the Federal Reserve comes under pressure, or local state banking departments looking at their regulatory requirements differently?
I think the regulatory environment is certainly an area of real concern, and the federal regulatory environment is different than the state one. So I think when we talk about political strategizing, I think we can have different conversations with the banking departments of the states and at the federal level. Right now, I don't think we have a conversation with the feds, but the FDIC might be the exception. But there are issues that we absolutely ought to address, and I think the Public Banking Institute is going to be taking that on in a much more focused way, especially around the insurance, the collateralization issues like that.
Okay. Vanessa, I'm going to turn back to you. I'd just like to note before I do that Cheyenne has put quite extensive statements in the chat, and I would hope that folks who are attending would read that and pay attention to it, and also that we can continue that part of the conversation offline.
Great.
Great. So, Walt, I have a question. And actually, let me do a little background on it first. So, Coffee Lindsay, locally here in Philadelphia, has just become the executive director of Impact PHL, which is kind of like an organization. I think it's been around for maybe 4 or 5 years now, and it's sort of created quite the epicenter and network of impact investing, collaboration, and uplifting of projects. Projects like some of the ETIs we're thinking about, economically targeted initiatives. They uplifted WCRP, Women's Community Revitalization Projects, loan fund. They've been building deeply affordable housing for about 30 years now, and they finally decided to raise their own fund. And because this network was now sort of active, they were successful in raising that. Does the public bank interact much with the impact investing community, and what do you think of sort of activating them? I want to add one more thing about Coffee Lindsay, though. So Coffee Lindsay, now the executive director of Impact PHL, I first heard Coffee Lindsay a couple of weeks after the mayoral election, and she was in fact the director of the Office of Strategic Partnerships. She was on a panel for Philanthropy Network's annual meeting, and she brought up herself economically targeted initiatives that are funded by the New York Pension Fund. So I was like, ooh, public banking folks need to be talking to her. So now she's in a different position, but so I just put that out there as like, that's a community I think we should connect with. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's perfect, Vanessa. And it's funny you mentioned Impact PHL because it was mentioned earlier in a meeting that I was having with someone at an impact investment group about public banking, and I believe they're going to be meeting in May. And
Yes, annual conference in May.
I
Yep.
absolutely want us to be there.
Okay.
Because one of the things about impact investing and having them as partners in this architecture and this ecosphere of finance is that they are the money needs to be kept someplace. It needs to be kept in our own bank. The capabilities that you have when you have a bank to create innovative lending plans, credit sources, and so forth. I mean, that's what the bank is for. It's a tool for municipalities and the public to be able to finance itself. So impact investing is one component of that, just as other agencies are another component of public financing. But this all needs to come together. And I think that one of the elements that we're proposing and is going to be important is to have citizen advisory groups, citizen governance entities that will participate with government and the local lending community to identify projects, to be able to navigate the various fiscal needs and demands and the various types of ways in which this financing can happen. Again, that's all on the local stage. You don't need Washington for that. So if we would just, let Washington be Washington, and let's have Philadelphia be Philadelphia, and realize how powerful we are when we work together and think anew instead of being isolated. Instead of being isolated pockets of strength, let's put our hands together, our thoughts and our ideas together, and make some real substantive plans for what we're going to do next, and how the administration will find out about how they'll be our partner.
Exactly. Yeah. I have put a link to the Total Impact Summit, which is the conference for Impact PHL. It's March 14th and 15th, I believe, in Philadelphia. And people come from all over the country. So yeah, well, let's work on getting you on a panel. Going to take it back to you, Peter. We only have 2 minutes. Anything quick?
I think that it's probably time for Walt to give his closing statement.
There you go.
We have to end promptly today at 5.
Well, I know that we're close on time, so I was talking fast. I hope not too fast, but I do want to just remind everybody that your power, and I think this is something Kamala said regularly, is that your power is your voice. Your voice is your power, and we want it to be in the choir of organizers and activists that are in our midst and just around us, because of our commitment to our neighbors and our communities and our economy for justice and fairness. If we don't do that work, it's not going to get done. So let's create a bank. Let's get on with this.
Thank you so much, Walt. We always love when we have you here with us. And join us again next month for Financing Philadelphia's Future. Thank you all for joining us and have a great day. And happy holiday.